has its own radio station, WHCR 90.3 FM, the voice of Harlem.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is Angela Harden, General Manager of WHCR 90.3 FM, the voice of Harlem. Today, as many of you already know, we lost another Harlem legend, the late Bill Perkins. We send our prayers and well wishes to his family. Senator Perkins represented Harlem as an elected official for 25 years. Perkins was one of the few elected leaders to stand with the exonerated Central Park Five at the time of their arrest. He also spearheaded the successful fight to pass the Childhood Lead Paint Poisoning Prevention Act of 2004 to protect our kids. It is important to hear from a politician's constituents to get a real sense of how they serve the people. So today, we have a panel of leaders from various community organizations working towards social justice who will speak about Senator Perkins' legacy here in the Harlem community. I will introduce each panelist before they give their remarks. My first panelist is Reggie James. He is the founder of Revision Inc. and Revision House, LLC, and founder of the Another Perspective radio show on WHCR, which airs Fridays at 4 p.m. Mr. James?
Good afternoon. I'm so happy to be here. It's an honor to say anything about Bill. I met Bill either 2000 or 2001, I believe, when he was running for re-election. And at that time, I was the CEO and founder of the New Japple Marketing, and we produced the Harlem USA map. So we had finished the second edition, the Millennium Edition, and I used to attend fundraisers with him. And he used to like to just show the map because I believe his district had expanded. And I remember I was at a couple of fundraisers with him at, in Upper Manhattan. I think that was not part of his district before, if my memory serves me right. And he was just always so down to earth. He was so easy to talk to and so pro-Black, he was one of those guys that was not afraid to say what needed to be said in the room, where other people would shy away or it might not be politically favorable. He was totally the opposite of that. He was just unafraid. Another thing that we had in common is, he worked out all the time. He ran. He was a runner. I thought he was a powerful example as a Black man to keep in shape. So you would see him, half the time I saw him, he had his shorts on, his workout clothes, and so we shared that. And as was mentioned, the other thing I remember is, with the exonerated five, he was one of the only, elected officials I knew that was right up front with them when it wasn't popular, when even Black people were wondering, what the deal was. And, there again, he was not afraid to speak up and to support, our causes. And the other thing I remember is when Obama was running for president, the politicians, the Black politicians in Harlem were not, they were down with Hillary. And he was the only one that I recall that was down with Obama in the very, very beginning. So these are, like qualities that, takes a certain kind of man, a maverick he was. The other thing, I had done some, that's how I gotten, connected with WHCR. I was the Director of External Affairs. I was really a consultant for the Institute for Family Health, which has since moved up to Harlem. And he would help, I was charged with helping them get legislation passed around segregated care. And Bill, again, on a couple bills he co-sponsored. And again, he was about health. He was about education. And, we are all complicated men and women. And, I've heard, different people have different opinions, and there's always going to be distractors because someone that's a maverick like that and a leader, they're going to have the haters. So I love the brother. And that's all I got. Thank you.
And thank you so much, Reggie. That is why I asked you to speak, because we need those perspectives. All right. Our next panelist is C. Virginia Fields, founder and president of the National Black Leadership Commission on Health.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Angela, and to all of your guests. And I, too, express my deepest condolences to Pam, the love of his life, his wife, his friend for so many years, and to members of his family. And let me say, I probably am going to say this, and if it's not true, somebody can correct me. I probably have known Bill longer than anyone else on the Zoom. Bill and I first became acquainted probably about the early, middle to late 70s. I was working as the director for the first work release program in prisoners here in Harlem on 118th Street, the old Mel's Plaza. And I was the director of the social services, and we hired Bill as our program director, where he was responsible for going to Rikers Island, and we would go there at least twice a week to interview prospective candidates, prisoners who were within, say, maybe 5 or 6 years of their max out date, and to see if they qualified to come into the first work release program. And we worked together on that, and that's how I got to know him. That's how I became first aware of his deep commitment to his community, as Reggie said, to Black people, to his community. He loved his community. And I saw that at the very beginning. And both of us left. I think he left probably just a little before I did, but within probably 3 or 4 years of that time. And because the city was failing to do its part for what they had committed as men came out of the prison. We were supposed to find them jobs and get them reacquainted with the community. We could do that part, but the jobs were not there. The educational training was not there. So Bill became disillusioned. I became disillusioned, and we both sought other things to do. I continued to work in my field of social work, going on to Children's Aid Society, and from there, the National Board of WHCR, and then the political office. But during this time, Bill continued to be very active in the community as a community activist. He was out there working the community. I became active in the community on the political side, working with Bill Lynch and working with Carl McCall. He became the president of the Amsterdam Democratic Club, where we were supporting a candidate at that time, Diane Lacey. And we took note. Bill Lynch, Carl McCall, mostly Bill Lynch, took Lynch of this activist, this community activist named Bill Perkins. Well, who is Bill Perkins? And I said, well, I'm proud to say I know Bill Perkins. And this is who Bill Perkins is. So outreach was made to Bill, and he was convinced to run for district leader. He ran, he won, and that began the pathway down as far as a political office. So we continued to work for many years together, I'm very pleased to say. And when I ran for the city council, we weren't always on the same side because he was supporting the incumbent and I was running against an incumbent. How dare you run against an incumbent? But we ran, I won, and our friendship and working together never changed. And of course, when I left the office and ran for borough president, he ran for the city council. And I always joked with him and would say, Bill, I opened up the door. You wouldn't run against an incumbent, but I did. Once I did, it opened it up, and then we just continued to work from there. And as council member, he in my borough presidency, even when I was a council member, he always supported me. So I've always had that relationship with Bill. Many people don't know that, even in the political world, but it's always been a positive one. I've always seen, again, that passion, that activism, his commitment to this community And that never changed. And as Manhattan Borough President, he was introducing lead legislation. I was very supportive when I opened up the first lead safe house for families who needed a place to stay while their apartment was being abated from lead. He always supported, the efforts in many ways, and we certainly worked together on the redevelopment of Frederick Douglass Boulevard. And most of you know about Frederick Douglass Boulevard. And when I went to Councilman Perkins about support for erecting a statue of Harriet Tubman, he was right there with me. And I think he may have allocated some dollars from the city council budget to be a part of that. So our relationship continued through the years, and I am just really pleased to have had the opportunity to know Perkins from the mid 70s straight through, the time that he stepped down. And even after that, to continue the relationship with he and Pam, seeing them on the walk, quite frankly, and having lunch with her that provided respite care, because I can't think of a person who's been more devoted in making sure that she gave the time and the support that her husband needed. So, it's a loss. And we know that he had stepped back a few years earlier, but he never lost his commitment and his dedication to this community. So again, it's with a sense of sadness, but on the other hand, it's a sense of joy that I know as a Christian, and many of us, that he has reached his eternal home and he is at rest. No more suffering, no more pain. And I think he has certainly left a legacy that is worthy of all of us continuing to work on, to support, and to be a part of all that he gave to this community because he gave so much. So thank you, Angela, and WHCR team, Tina, for thinking about doing this and making this possible.
Thank you so much, Ms. Fields. We really appreciate your heartfelt words. And it sounds like they should have interviewed you for some of those articles I saw in the newspapers about the late Bill Perkins. And next up, we have New York State Senator Robert Jackson.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. And thank you for putting this on and talking about Bill Perkins, my brother from another mother. That's how we call each other. And I was I'm in a Democratic conference right now, but I felt this was extremely important for me to step out and speak about my brother. And I turned the Daily News up here in Albany, New York, but I have the Daily News from New York City. It says, "City loses a giant. A Harlem politician, Perkins, dies at 74, fought for health and justice." Well, absolutely correct. I read most of the article, and the article is a tribute to Bill and what he's done as an individual, as an elected public official, not afraid to go up against those that had all of the power. And I remember when I was first elected and served in the city council in 2002, and I served through to 2013, but that was the beginning of a new term that had where term limits began in the city of New York. And so that was the first electoral process where there was a big major turnover in the city council. And so we had people like Charles Barron, Bill de Blasio, Simca Felder, myself, and others. We were supporting Bill Perkins to be the speaker of the city council. And so we stuck together to the end. And obviously what occurred was that Gifford Miller became the speaker. But right before, when things were coming down the home stretch, I remember us getting together and talking about what is in it for us. What type of committees that we want to be on to make a difference in our community. And so we all did that, and we gave it to Bill, since Bill was the one that we were supporting to be the speaker, and said, "Here you go, Bill, here's your list. Go and do your work." And he worked, and he became the deputy majority leader of the New York City Council. And about six of us that were supporting Bill. We got our assignments on committees based on what we put down on the paper and went with Bill in order to do what he had to do in order to make it work. And so he made it work on behalf of us. And then, as a legislator, Bill lived in Harlem, and he knew what the conditions of rats were in our community, just like the mayor basically has a rat czar now. And so we literally had press conferences at night when the garbage was out and where the rats were running around. And some of the reporters were following us and clearly seeing and jumping at the fact that the rats were crawling when we were running by. But Bill was not afraid to show that because we needed it to be dealt with in order to try to deal with eliminating the rats. And so that was a powerful statement just right there in itself. But as you know, in 2004, I believe that the date was, we passed a bill with lead paint poisoning in the city council, and Bill was right in the lead for that. And so when you look at his history as a legislator, he's never been afraid of standing up, even if you have to stand up by yourself. And the prime major example of that was when he stood up against all the other Democrats, including myself, let me include myself in it, and said, no, I'm not going with Hillary Clinton, I'm going with Barack Obama. The first, as you know, the first Black man to be president of the United States of America. And that was a giant step that Bill took on behalf of Barack Obama and on behalf of the people that he represented. That will always be part of one of the victories that Bill has to be proud of. But I say to you that when I ran my first New York City marathon at age 56, because Bill's a runner, he's run about a dozen marathons, and we trained together. And he said to me, I'll meet you at 125th Street and First Avenue. And he ran with me, alongside of me, as helping me to run this marathon, all the way to almost the total end where we re-entered Central Park again near 59th Street and Broadway. And at that point, he couldn't run with me because you needed your tags on in order to get through that point. But I ran that marathon in 3 hours and 38 minutes, which for a senior running the first marathon was very, very successful. But also with Bill running, I've met him at certain places also later on and ran with him just like he ran with me. And that's the type of brother he was. You didn't have to beg him to do anything. He would be interested in helping one another. And that was extremely important. And when we were in the city council, I had a car. And so we would leave City Hall and go do the rounds we have to do for the various receptions and meetings we had. So we were always together many, many times during the campaign in order to do that. And in fact, someone sent me a picture. I don't know what office I was running from, whether it was New York State Senate or Borough President. And we had a jog through the community. And here's Bill Perkins with my shirt on, Robert Jackson, I think, for Borough President or for City Council or whatever it was. We're both running and jogging up an avenue. And someone sent that to me and I said, this is really important. So that's what Bill was about. And not afraid to speak up, not afraid to disagree with you, but focus on doing what's best for our community. And that was Bill. And he had appropriate staff. As you know, Cordell Clear, who is now a New York State Senator representing the 30th Senatorial District, which is part of East Harlem, all of Harlem, and a little bit of Washington Heights, all of West Harlem. Cordell Clear was his chief of staff. And obviously, we as elected public officials depend on our staff as part of our team. And so clearly he had a team approach in dealing with this type of legislation. And so Bill, he's definitely going to be missed. Obviously, when you look at especially the things that happened yesterday at the same time, the announcement of his death, the New York Post, the New York Daily News says a radical Harlem Council politician will not seek his second term. And obviously, when you look at the first term 2 years earlier, Bill Perkins had on the first round of votes, the most votes out of all of the people that were running for the city council, and he was running for re-election. And but not for 13 ballots to count down, Bill Perkins would have still been the city council member. But 13 votes later, obviously Richardson Jordan won. So this is a time where we basically say thank you to Bill for what he's done. I've already communicated with Pam, his wife. I mean, our condolences go out to not only his wife, his immediate brothers and sisters and family, but the entire Harlem community is his family. So he's definitely going to be missed. The advocacy, the straightforwardness, the brotherhood and sisterhood that he pervades, and also the type of, his dress. He always was dressed to impress himself and to everybody else. So with that, we love him. He's definitely going to be missed. Thank you for allowing me to come on.
Thank you so much, Senator. And you're listening to a tribute to the work of the late New York Senator and Council Member Bill Perkins. Our next panelist is Geraldine Collins. She is Executive Director of the National Alliance of HUD Tenants, advocating on behalf of 1.2 million families living in project-based Section 8 housing and public housing converting to RAD. She is also the host of the Ask Geraldine Housing Show, which airs on WHCR's on Mondays at 5 p.m. Ms. Collins, welcome to this tribute to Bill Perkins.
Good afternoon, Angela, and thank you for this opportunity to speak on behalf of this legend, this giant. I can't think of all the names that he should be called because he's all that and then some more. I met Senator Perkins 30 years ago when I worked at Harlem Urban Development Corporation. And during that time, I was advocating on behalf of tenants back then, and I'm still doing the same thing now. And he gave me my first proclamation back in 2014. He honored me because he said he was very impressed by the work that I had been doing in the community, in the Harlem community and the surrounding community. And I want everyone to know that I live on the Upper West Side, Goddard Riverside, Phelps House. And Senator Perkins, each time he would come to Goddard, he would meet with all the tenants. Anybody that wanted to speak with him, he was always speaking with them, even after the meeting was over. He was always there to hear their questions and their answers. And he was our senator here on the Upper West Side. And we loved him. And as we went out into the streets and on the buses, he was always a personable person, conversation with everyone that he came in contact with. And we are definitely going to miss him on the Upper West Side. And I know in the whole of Harlem, he's definitely going to be missed. So to his family, my heartfelt condolences to his wife, his entire family. And we know in the biblical sense, the Bible says to be absent from this body is to be present with the Lord. And we know that he's present with our Lord. Thank you so much for this opportunity, Angela.
Thank you so much, Ms. Collins. And I see who I believe is Larry Woods, Director of Advocacy and Organizing at Goddard Riverside for over 37 years, shaking his head. So I'm assuming that's you, Mr. Woods, correct?
Thank you. And I want to thank you, Angela, and Jerry and Tina and others for inviting me. I'm honored to be part of this mix honoring Senator Perkins and Bill. I first met Senator Perkins at some point in the late 80s, early 90s as a community activist and a tenant leader. And right from the get-go, he struck me as so brilliant, highly intelligent, smart, strategic, committed in so many ways as an activist for social economic justice. But just to echo what other people have said, he was also so personable, so down to earth. As Jerry said, when he's come down to Goddard Riverside, we're a big settlement house. We have senior centers, after school programs. We do outreach to chronically street homeless. We run supported housing for the formerly homeless. So we have a large array of programs. But when he came down to Goddard, when we had a candidates forum or an event, a lot of elected officials and candidates come through here and they pass through and they expect people to kiss their ring as they work the room. Not Bill. he sat down at the domino table. He got in a game with the other men and really mixed it up. Or he went into the senior dining room. He sat down and had lunch with everybody and worked that room and talked to folks, just as Jerry reported with the tenants upstairs in Phelps House. And as others have said, he spent a lifetime fighting for things. He was also so independent, and that's what also struck me. And willing to take on popular stands. And others has mentioned, he stood up against Trump and defending the exonerated, the Central Park Five. He stood up against big real estate, who's one of the most powerful lobbyists here in New York City and the state. When working with his, chief of staff Cordell Clear, he got the lead paint bill passed, and he stood up against machine politics. Quite frankly, when he ran for himself as a candidate, it was often against the club's picked candidates. But he worked Harlem and he worked the communities and he built support as a grassroots activist. And certainly he was independent when he endorsed President Obama and also Bernie Sanders. He also came out, Senator Clinton, but twice Bill passed over for what he thought was superior candidates. Senator Jackson just mentioned how he dressed, but I remember his hats. He was always had such an amazing hat collection, was so dapper and so engaging and down to earth at the same time. So I dare say Harlem has lost a huge champion, but I really think New York City and dare I say the nation has lost quite a champion for social and economic justice. So in his honor, our work continues. And I just want to say rest in peace, Bill, and rest in power.
Thank you so much for those really, really heartfelt words. I appreciate that. And our next presenter is Aisha Sekou. She is founder and CEO of Street Corner Resources, and she's the host of Street Corner Resources Live on WHCR, which airs on Mondays at 8 a.m. Aisha?
One, I want to say peace and blessings to the WHCR family and all of those on this Zoom. I want to really pay homage to my brother, Bill Perkins. When I first met him, I wasn't in full understanding of his way, what I call his way of being. He was a lot tough and a stickler for detail. I remember I was advocating for the bikers at one time. And this is just one of the things that stands out with me, not our first experience. But I was advocating for the bikers to get a bike park. Now, everybody knows the bikers have been somewhat of a nuisance. When I said somewhat of a nuisance to him, he said, no, a nuisance. And he said, why are you up here advocating for them? And I said, well, I think that if they had a place to ride, that we wouldn't see them riding on the street. So we went back and forth. We had so many meetings. But I'll tell you, he was not in agreement with supporting the bikers so much. But what I loved and appreciated was his honesty, because there were other people that I had asked for support and they kind of went around the barn, so to speak. One of the things about Senator Bill Perkins, he didn't go around John Henry's barn. He didn't make you think you was having a nice little walk in the park. He would tell you straight up how he felt and cut no corners. But he did say, I'll tell you what, you come back with the specifications for the park and some possibilities of where it could be, and we can have another conversation. He didn't say he would make it happen. He said we could have another conversation. So he gave me my marching orders. We brought those things back. Some of them were not doable because of the land mass or lack of mass. But he taught me a lot in the process. I also learned a few more things about activism. And one of the things that when I think about him and me and what he brought to me in terms of using my voice, he was not looking to be popular. He didn't care whether you liked him or not. He was going to say what needed to be said, and he stood up in his place in a strong way and would present whatever the issue was in a way that was almost unrefutable. nobody wanted to really mess with him too much. He laid it down and that was it. I would often see him running through Harlem in different places, up on Broadway, down 7th Avenue, Lenox Avenue, 5th Avenue. And one time I saw him running with his hat on. And I thought that was really funny. I said, why you got your hat on? He said, I forgot to take it off. And he kept running, like he answered it and kept running. So for me, the memorable things are not necessarily all of the political pieces, but more the humanistic part of him, the strength that he always, like he came in like he owned the room. And that's what I learned from him, own the room. If you are standing and helping your community and giving service, you have a place in that room. And so he always made me feel like that. And I took that on. I walk in a room and there's an issue. I act in that spirit, the Bill Perkins spirit, baby, with the hat on, but the head wrap, right? So I'm grateful that the Creator put him on this planet to be who he was, because he was an example. I know a lot more than me, a lot more people than myself. I'll just say, I don't see it as a loss to not have him, because he has touched so many people. I listened to everyone give their thoughts, and in each person there was something different that you all recognized about his spirit, his way of giving, what he brought to the table. And so those things are still here. That's his legacy. So as long as you leave a legacy and you leave something in people so that they move forward and then they give to someone else, you never lose. So long as we give and we learn, we never lose. And so there's no loss in him not being here. I believe he was ready to transition. He battled for a while, but I know that he left something very strong because it lives in me. So I'll just say that. I'm going to sign off. Peace and blessings. We're out here, much like he probably would have done the same. We're out here looking for 2 kids that are missing. This is our 3rd day looking for them. So we have a digital truck that we put out here. We're out here with Democracy Prep, so you'll see the kids in the background. And so the work that we do is right in the street. Oftentimes, like the way we saw Bill Perkins, he would come up in the street and say, so what's going on? And, and for us today, this is what's going on. We're looking to find these 2 kids. And so I'm moving in the spirit of Bill Perkins. So peace and blessings.
And I wish you well in your search for the children.
Thank you. You all pray for them.
Yes, we will.
Thank you so much.
Will. Thank you for your work. You're listening to WHCR 90.3 FM. I'm your host, Angela Harden, and you're listening to a tribute to the work of the late Harlem legend, New York Senator and Council Member Bill Perkins. Our next panelist is Cordell Clear, New York State Senator. She was Bill Perkins' chief of staff for 20 years, so I know that she has some firsthand information for us. Ms. Clear?
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for doing this, first of all. Second of all, I just want to say how fortunate I am to have worked with such a strong leader. It's the irony of this. I was just on this program on your station the very day before his passing, talking about his leadership and talking about how fortunate I was to be in that work at that time. Bill was no easy person, but iron sharpens iron, and it made me sharper. It made me better. It made me stronger. And I am so glad that I had the opportunity to work with him. This is not someone who you're necessarily going to agree with all the time, but I can tell you one thing. I slept well at night knowing that I worked for an individual who cared about this community and who earnestly felt that he was doing the very best thing for his community. And also, he taught me service. Service. It's about speaking for the people. It's about representing the people. And I only hope that I carry that with me, and I do that every single day as I'm here in Albany right now. And sometimes there are things that are difficult to say and things that may be unpopular to say and unpopular to do, but you do them because you know it represents your people. And that was the kind of strength Bill Perkins had. That was the kind of commitment and dedication he had. And yes, it might mean that you don't have as many friends, and it might mean that you don't get invited to all the different places and things. But you know what? You were always welcome in your community, and you always knew that you were doing the right thing. And I think that's all any one of us should be striving for. I think we should always strive to make sure that we are doing what our community has asked us to do. We know even our own communities don't agree all the time, but we try to make sure that we are representing as best as we can. So this is a tough moment. This is very difficult for many of us. But again, I have had the pleasure of working for him from day one when he was elected in 1997 for the first time to the city council. And we served until he was term limited out, and then he followed David Patterson into the Senate seat. And I continued to work for him as his chief of staff. I couldn't imagine working for anyone else. And I have no regrets on the work that he did and that I did with him. And like I said, you know, if there's the one thing I can say is not even something that needs to be said. Here is someone I worked for 19 years, and I am now the senator representing that district. So you take from that the legacy of a great man, a great senator, a great council person, a great community leader in our community. We have truly lost a giant.
Yes, and you know, each one teach one. That's the African adage, and that's what he did with you.
Yes.
Yes, and we need more of that from our elected officials. We need to mentor young people so that there's someone who can step in our shoes when we're gone. And you're doing that. So I commend you. And thank you so much for your service and for learning and for being just a great person.
Thank you. Thank you for this. Have a great day, everyone.
I believe I see James All-Star Alston on the line. Is that correct, James?
Yes.
Okay, great. James All-Star Alston is the host of the Diamond Gem Music Collection on WHCR, which airs on Fridays at 3 p.m. And he has some words to say about his friend, Bill Perkins.
Yes. First, I want to say I give my condolences to his family, his wife, and all the people that he knows. I met Bill Perkins in the early 2000s. He showed me how to do things and I bring people to his office and he would help them out. I just couldn't believe it. I was like, wow, he is really good. And he never stopped. And I just kept coming by the office to see him. I went to parties. That's when he found out that I knew his wife, Pam. And he always would treat me very nice. He was really a real good friend to all the people. When he was with you, he was with you all the way. I'll never forget him as long as I live. God bless him, his family.
Well, thank you so much, James. We appreciate those heartfelt comments. You're listening to WHCR 90.3 FM. I'm your host, Angela Harden, and you're listening to a tribute to the work of the late New York Senator and Council member, Bill Perkins. What I will do is I'll read some of the statements that have been made by some of our New York politicians on the passing of Bill Perkins. Quote, Harlem has lost a giant, end quote. Mayor Eric Adams wrote Tuesday morning. Quote, Bill Perkins was a legend of the New York government. He was also a good friend. I will miss his company and his counsel, end quote. Quote, New York City Council member Bill Perkins was a friend and a fellow public servant who touched the lives of many who called New York City home, said Representative Adriano Espaillat. I am deeply touched by today's news of his passing, and his loss will be felt by all. In his work, Councilman Perkins made a difference in his leadership, utilizing his voice to bring about change and to improve the lives of others. He came to the defense of the exonerated five and took on Donald Trump in the face of injustice. Councilman Perkins showed courage during difficult times and was a fearless advocate for the vulnerable. He treated all with the respect, equity, and justice that they deserved, and he demanded change when and where it was needed the most. He and I served together in the New York State Senate, and during a critical time when I needed him the most, he was there, and his support remained unwavering throughout the years. I extend my condolences to his wife, Pamela, and the entire Perkins family during this time of bereavement. May his legacy continue to inspire each of us, and may the memories we have of our dear friend never be forgotten. And this one is from Manny de los Santos. He says, I am deeply saddened to hear about the passing of former New York State Senator and New York City Council member Bill Perkins. He was a tremendous public servant who cared deeply for his community of Harlem and the people of New York in general. With his passing, we are greatly diminished, and we must continue to serve our communities as graciously and dedicatedly as did Mr. Perkins. This is from Assemblyman Al Taylor. He says, it is with deep sadness that we learn of the news of the passing of our beloved friend and esteemed colleague, Bill Perkins. His loss leaves a void that cannot be filled, and his life's work will forever be etched in our hearts and minds. Bill Perkins was not only a political official and activist, but also a compassionate and dedicated public servant. From his humble beginnings in the South Bronx to his tireless advocacy for social justice, equity, and community betterment, Bill's journey was one of unwavering commitment. Throughout his career, Bill fearlessly championed the rights of the marginalized, fought for public health, human rights, community services, and education reform. His sponsorship of crucial legislation and unwavering dedication to improving lives were remarkable. Beyond his achievements, Bill Perkins stood as a beacon of integrity and courage. He fearlessly defended the Exonerated Five, took on injustices, and supported Barack Obama during his historic campaign. His unwavering commitment to his principles inspired us all. Today we mourn not only the loss of a professional, but also a dear friend and confidant. Bill's warm heart, unwavering support, and genuine care touched countless lives. His legacy will forever inspire us to follow his example. To Bill's beloved wife, Pamela, and the entire Perkins family, I extend my deepest condolences. Bill's impact on our community and our lives was immeasurable. May his memory bring you solace as we continue his important work for a more just and equitable society. As we mourn, let us cherish the memories of joy, laughter, and collaboration we shared. May those memories be a guiding light in this time of bereavement. Bill Perkins, your legacy will forever be engraved in our city's history. We are grateful for the profound impact you made, the lives you touched, and the spirit of compassion and justice you instilled in us all. Rest in peace, dear friend. With heartfelt sympathy, Al Taylor. Thank you for listening. And I thank you to all of the guests who gave their heartfelt statements about the late Bill Perkins. We send our prayers and well wishes to his family. And again, thank you for listening. As soon as we get information on his homegoing services, we will share it with you. Thank you and have a good evening.